All right, Philly, we are live here in the studio today. WPEB 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM. I don't know if I've ever shared with you, audience. I'm always nervous as I'll get out when I get into this studio. And today there were a few different things that threw me off slightly, but I think we're going to have a dynamite show today regardless of all of those things. So welcome to CJ Speaks Live. I am here today with two dynamic individuals. One is a poet, and the other is
a full-time student studying graphic design and a community organizer.
All right. And what is your name, sister?
Nicole.
Oh, thank you for being here today, Nicole. And our other guest in the studio today is KP Ultra. KP, what's going down?
I'm doing well. I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Glad to be talking to you. Glad to be talking with the both of you all.
Yes.
Today.
Yes. I think that we're going to have a pretty dynamic show. The weather has been like something we've been waiting for a long time. It was beautiful yesterday. There was no precipitation. We were off, most of us. And then the day before, I think, along with Saturday, was pretty nice. So let's get it in on what we're going to do today. So what are we talking about?
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit of everything. But the last time we saw you, we were at Move. We were at the Move stage play.
Yes.
Move mocks us all. And so I really feel like it's been an interesting time. So you had Malcolm X's birthday on May 19th. You had the Move 40th, I don't know if you want to call it anniversary. That was on
yes, that was
May 13th.
Yep.
40 years since Move, since May 13th, 1985. So yeah, Move, Malcolm, and then Juneteenth. Like that kind of feels like the season.
And a celebration. I don't know if celebration is the right word because it wasn't celebratory, but it was the memoir of George Floyd.
Oh, that's right.
Just the other day.
George Floyd.
Yes. I want to say that was either yesterday or the day before.
Which is so interesting because that was 2020 that happened, 5 years ago. It seems like a lot longer.
It seems like a lot longer.
And with the George Floyd case, with Trayvon Martin, I can name like quite a few, obviously, going back. It feels like these big moments of change for a little while, and then but the years later, I'm like, did it change at all? So I don't know. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and I think mentally probably further back than that, in the history. But yeah.
Yeah, I just so happened to be listening to Parable of the Sower, and it's kind of ironic. It's kind of ironic listening to that book and still seeing similarities today.
What was the name of that book?
Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler.
Well, it's interesting you say that because both my parents are Southerners, and to see a black president, to see the possibility of maybe it was going to be a female black president, and considering my mother and I are 22 years apart, and I'll say 60 years ago, we're still in the same place we were then when my mother was born.
Wow.
And my mother's in her 80s. So then I'm not going to use her mother because she wasn't around. But then she was before my mother lost her. Imagine what it was like back then. And then slavery is not that far long ago because my grandfather grew up on a plantation.
Your grandfather.
So that's not that far ago.
Not your great-grandfather. Your grandfather grew up on a plantation.
So
not necessarily enslaved, but grew up on a plantation.
Grew up on a plantation.
Will you explain that a little bit? So are they sharecropping on the plantation afterwards?
So I really don't have the history. I believe that my moving back to Mobile, Alabama in 1998, as I moved back to Philly in 2007, my cause was to write a book, although I went to graduate school and became a mother and a wife or should I say a wife and a mother, because that's how it happened first and second. And I really feel that my call is to go back, and to go back in a different realm where I'm going back initially with the impressionable self of writing a book. So I don't know if he was a sharecropper. I'm going to say I don't think so, because my mother never used that term. But I will say that, yeah, he grew up on the plantation. And I would say he didn't know who his father was.
Wow.
And that's the most I have of that history.
Yeah.
I have so much other history, family-wise. But that portion right there, I don't have.
And you'd met him? You met your grandfather?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you knew him growing
Yes. He was a Deep South Baptist minister, as a matter of fact.
up.
He was actually in Hattiesburg. My mother says she remembers someone knocking at the door. And I guess days later, moments later, they were on a train to Mobile because he owned a lot of land. But if you're not paying taxes or what's necessary or whatever the case may be, because we're black. And if you're black, you really don't matter. But I will share one historic part is that the night that Medgar Evers was killed, there was a meeting in my grandfather's basement. And that's where blacks used to meet for the NAACP meetings, etc. And that's where Medgar Evers was before he faced his death that evening.
Nice.
That's a story for the book.
So that's historic.
Wow.
Yes. So there's a lot of history that I really need to go back, delve into, and put on paper. Because I will say that, although you are the guests, I will say that I went to Africatown, because Mobile is here. Africatown is right around the corner, which is really nowhere in distance. I've done poetry there. And when I got there, I said, this should be a national landmark. Because the last slave ship was the Clotilde, which was Cujo Lewis. And that was based on a bet that businessmen put together a bet that, oh, we can't do this. Oh. And they came back with a slave ship. But they took it over. So in Africatown, there is a mound of where the bodies are. So those would be the original people from that slave ship. When you go to the projects in that area, the people still look the same as those people over there in that burial site. So my thing was, why are we in destitute? This is a national landmark. So from what I was told, my counterparts have made it a national landmark. And now they charge you to go see it.
Of course.
Wow.
As Mobile is getting gentrified.
That's wow.
Not surprised. Mobile is south. Where's it? So Birmingham, I know, is like on the west, the Georgia side of Alabama. Like,
So Mobile is 45 minutes from Pensacola,
Pensacola, Florida.
2 hours from NOLA.
So 2 hours from New Orleans.
So we're farther away from, we're going towards the south from Birmingham. Because I went to Montgomery at Alabama State and got a master's.
Yeah.
So I drove 2.5 hours up to Montgomery and back down to Mobile.
Gotcha. Okay. Because we were in New Orleans recently and never realized how close New Orleans was to any part of Alabama, really.
Yes.
I knew Mississippi was right there, but I didn't realize it was like, oh, in New Orleans, you're like 2 hours away from parts of like deep into Alabama, pretty much, like not even like,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's interesting to see those like connections that that west side of Florida, along with like Alabama, Mississippi, New Orleans, it's just like all within hours. Like,
and don't forget Florida.
Yeah.
Florida's right there too.
Right. Right. It's like
So
2 or 3
this
hour
is
radius.
this is the even deeper part. I used to go to my Mobile, Alabama, every summer of my life, every summer, and possibly for Christmas. So that's where I was every summer because my grandparents were in Jackson, Mississippi, and Mobile, Alabama. So when I moved back, I learned 2 things. One was the name Hurricane. I didn't know hurricanes even came through Mobile. I did say I was there every summer, right?
Yeah.
And then I learned that NOLA was only 2 hours away. So I was 33 when I moved back to Mobile, and I learned those two prolific things because my grandfather was a Deep South Baptist minister, so we went to church. And we may have gone to the Piccadilly. Is that the right?
Grocery store, Piccadilly.
No,
the restaurant.
The restaurant.
Yeah.
Isn't it the Piccadilly?
Yeah, it's Piccadilly.
Yeah, Piccadilly.
You been to Piccadilly? The Southern thing? Piccadilly.
Hey, Piccadilly, us Southerners, we know the Piccadilly.
Okay.
It's like a cafeteria.
Okay.
And you actually have a tray, and you pick the foods, and you put them on the tray, and then you pay at the end.
Along the lines of Golden Corral.
Okay.
Along those lines.
Golden Corral is buffet.
Yeah, I'll say Piccadilly is not a buffet.
It wasn't buffet. It was the cafeteria.
Sort of
style.
picking your entree.
Yeah, you pick a dish. But it was dilly. Yeah, Piccadilly. And then we always went to Shoney's Big Boy.
Oh,
We
so
always went to
all right.
Shoney's
So we
Big
grew up going to Shoney's. Shoney's is like, I talk about Bonanza, but Shoney's is
Bonanza. Yes.
Bonanza was a place we went to. Bonanza was a buffet, but you getting steaks there and all that. You going there for dinner and all that. Shoney's we went to for breakfast. So breakfast. So before church maybe. Well,
Before church? Y'all
I was
went
about to
to
say, like, wait a
Shoney's?
minute, like we're not actually doing anything really before church.
I was going to say.
But I say like a Saturday, or if you go to like early morning service on a Sunday, we might go to Shoney's after that. But the buffet breakfast is a like different thing. You don't even get those anymore.
But
Those
that
are
was
hard to come by.
traveling. That was our travel.
Yeah.
When we would come from Philly to Mobile, that's the stops we would make. And it wasn't until my sister, I can't remember where we were and what we were talking about, but it wasn't until she made the point of being black and traveling down the highways, you had to be mindful as to where you stopped and where you did not stop. Because of those things, that's why it was always Shoney's. It was always certain places that we would always go to.
Yeah.
And back then, I don't know what your mother did. It was a basket of food that we would always take with us. And not really realizing it is because you're black. And you can't stop everywhere.
Right.
And, I mean, if no one says that to you, you don't know. No one really said that to me, so I really didn't know until we had that conversation most recently. And I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. That made me think about the Green Book. The Green Book.
Salem Baptist Church does have a green book. I keep meaning to talk to my pastor to upgrade it. I think it's 2019. Yeah. And that's what the green book is.
Yeah.
The green book actually was along with AAA, because AAA did our map. There was no GPS. So we would always go to AAA for our triptych. And my parents drove. We drove to, I didn't say that, did I? We drove to Alabama and Mississippi every summer.
Yeah, when you
I
when
forgot
you said
that part.
Philly to
I
Mobile,
said we
I
went
was like,
every-
oh, and they were driving.
We drove.
Probably 15 hours.
Well,
more?
North Carolina, Durham is where my aunt and uncle lived and cousins.
Oh, so it's
that's the
halfway point.
part. Yep, that was the halfway part.
Okay.
That's how I would see my cousins every summer, unless they were already at my grandparents' in Jackson, Mississippi.
Wow.
That's funny.
So I'm a bi girl. I am Southern and Northern. So I'm a combination of both. And I still don't fit in either place.
Yeah, it's interesting because so I didn't. Yeah, we didn't grow really with the like packing a lunch or packing snacks necessarily. But I noticed that when I got to college, because I went to college in Georgia, so I would drive from Georgia to Arkansas very often, and Birmingham would be maybe sort of my halfway spot, a pit stop, because I had an aunt who lived there at the time, my Aunt Mary. So, but driving from Georgia to Arkansas, I would do it. It's 12 hour trip. I would do it by myself very often. Yeah, very often. This is 2002 to 2007. So I did it very often. I mean, 2 or 3 times a year, probably, without hesitation. I'm younger, late teens, early 20s. But like I said, I'll stop one time to fill up for gas and like keep it moving. I can get 6 hours on a tank Then I had 6 and 6. So anyway, but I noticed that like aunts and like grandparents, right, would be like, "Oh, you drove that by yourself?" Like they didn't really understand. And I was like, I don't understand what's like. I was like, I love driving, number one, but I never really thought about the danger, right? I'll tell you, I never thought about the danger until so I'm making this trip on a regular basis, '02 to '07, right? But in the middle of that, I'm started doing genealogy research, right? And it'll be years later that I find out that my great great grandfather Anderson McKinney, that it's around 1895 he makes this trip. He makes this specific trip from Georgia to Arkansas along with his family. That's how my family got to Arkansas, because they were enslaved in Georgia. And so, and I just happened to go to college. I'm the only one in my family, living family, to ever live in Georgia, right? And I found out this history while being in school in Georgia. And so thinking about like, oh, you like my great-great-grandfather took my great-great-grandfather, my great-great-grandmother, and their at least 2 daughters at the time, babies. They made this trip in 1895. That had to be a really dangerous trip, one, and it would have been a much slower process, too, right? And so it gave me the perspective of like, be fine with this 12 hours. It's not long. I wasn't complaining about it anyway, but like, put that 12 hours like, oh, like what your ancestors did in this really big trip, you do that like is nothing, right? And so I always think about, in comparison to my ancestors, I'm always thinking about like how much energy am I putting into a thing, and how much easier is it for me than it was my grandfather, my great grandparents, my great 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 grandparents, right? But the last thing is like how, again, like this trip was fairly safe for me in 2000s versus 1895, covering the same pieces of land, going the same places, same route, pretty much.
Well, I will say, driving from Montgomery back to Mobile, it was after my class ended at 9, so I was sure not to drink water, because I'm not going to stop and go to anyone's bathroom. Not coming home. First of all, I'm a black woman. I'm by myself. That was I started Alabama State. Well, first of all, I have to share that when I learned I had to travel for 2 hours, 2.5 hours for that 3-credit class, I was like, I'm from Philly. We don't do that. I'm not doing that. So I got accepted in 2000. I'm in Theodore, Alabama doing IT work, and the woman said something to me that I cannot remember. But all I remember is that the red flags went up, and I was on the phone asking, do you still have my information? And they said yes, and I was on the road driving. And then I came across people, and we carpooled, but certain things I wouldn't do because I wouldn't want to pull over to stop somewhere and use a bathroom. And this is 2001, and I graduated 2007, so I commuted the bulk of my time. Yeah, so being mindful on that highway in the South, well, actually anywhere today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, being from up here, like there's a different type of like a suspicion and fear that I have when people say Alabama or Mississippi compared to Texas, or like it's a different kind of like I don't know if I
What kind of fear is that? Talk to me about that.
Traumatic. I mean, based off of what I've learned in school, like, or just like, information I've like wanted to learn myself. Like those places are like, oh, like those were the places where the water was being poured on our ancestors. The dogs were coming. Like it's not, I don't really remember fond like stories coming from out of those places.
Well, my friend said to me when I moved back to Mobile, you don't ever have to worry about me coming to visit you. And it's based on your response that you just made. So I want to have a trip to Mobile, Alabama, so we can take the negative backlash off the palate, because the Gulf of Mexico is right there at the foot of Government Street. The beauty of Mobile is so beautiful. You see the shrimpers getting the shrimp off the water, Beulah Battery is the shrimp capital of the world, and that's in Alabama.
Bayou Battery.
Beulah Battery.
Beulah Battery.
And some of the shrimps that they sell in the grocery stores on the back of some of those packages. It's actually really beautiful. Spanish Fort, Alabama is beautiful. Beautiful.
Do you feel like the harshness that we talk about in those states, Mississippi, Alabama, you feel like the harshness in those states makes the black people down there closer, like, than other places?
I would say no, because this is where I was born, this is where I live, and this is what I know. What you all say about where I live and what you think you know, but I live here. So there's a difference. Does that make sense? I mean, I guess what I'm saying
Not yet.
is,
Do you
it's
feel like
almost-
people are close in Philly?
It's
people
almost
just as
where
close in
if
both
you
places.
walk into a room and it has an odor, you're like, ooh, did you? But the people in the room don't smell the odor because they're already in that room. But if you leave and come back, then you will smell. So if you are born in this city and state, and this is where you live, we're just who we are growing up.
Yeah. But you wouldn't necessarily say that community, you wouldn't necessarily say you felt a closer sense of community in Alabama than you have in Philly.
No.
Okay.
I would think that the sense of community is what we make for ourselves wherever we are. And if you look at it where, hypothetically, I grew up in a southern state where hatred, Jim Crow was so it was just ugly. But that's all I know. Now, segregation is over, and I'm high yellow. Can I pass as a white woman? Is that my choice? Is that what I'm going to do? Or I'm a high yellow woman, and I'm going to still stay with my culture of people. Or I'm a high yellow man. What do I decide to do? So I don't know the answer to that. I think that segregation opened up a door that if we could do it again, we wouldn't go through that door. I believe we would stay segregated, because segregation actually broke us down as people, in my opinion, considering before segregation. So before segregation, although I didn't live in it, my parents did, it was a black elementary school. It was a black school district.
Wait, before integration? You're saying before integration there was a black?
Integration,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So we were black. And as black people, we felt we were missing on something. And we were missing out on something. Just equality. That's what we were missing out on. Because we established our own universities, our own colleges. We have Black Wall Street. We have so many other streets of business that we don't even know or talk about. What do you think? In terms of your question.
I'm biased, obviously. Sorry. I'm biased, obviously. I was trying to combine those. But I feel like, I don't know, like, I mean, as an adult, I think some of it's nostalgia for me, right? Because I grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I grew up in this really extreme, to me now, sense of community. It's tricky, right? So the violence to me is the same in both places. Violence in Philly is the same as to me as the violence in Philadelphia. The violence in Philly is the same to me as the violence in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Pine Bluff, Arkansas is just smaller, but the ratio of violence is the same. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So that part doesn't differ to me at all. There's a feeling of joy, and like, to me back home, I can be happy. I can be joyful. I can express all of that joy. Don't ever have to be too cool or worry about being Joe. All of that. I don't have to hold back at all. Like when I'm expressing joy, when I'm feeling joy, when I'm around my people, like I'm at a football game. We're good. Of course, violence could pop off, but that's not the vibe we're on, right? Like, we can catch a light. No, the vibe is good, so we straight. You know what I mean? Like, things happen. You know, people are targets. I'm not saying it's ever like a complete utopia there, but I just feel like so often I have my guard down back home. I don't go back home now because it's not the same. You know, again, that's why I say it could be nostalgia, right? As an adult, I don't go back home, and I'm told not to go back home because of the violence. But we also realize that how many resources have been taken away, that the school was torn down. So now y'all not going to those football games like before. So much is like changed. But I would say like between church and like community events, I felt like such a huge sense of community that it's hard for me to find in Philadelphia. And I don't know if it's just Philadelphia, because it could be the time as well. Even in the poetry scene, I feel like so much of it is about opportunity and people being opportunists, as opposed to like, I like poetry, so I'm gonna be around poets. And so I don't feel the same sense, but I don't know if I could like blame it on Philly by itself or anything like that. Because I also catch, like, you know, when we talk about Move, I see the community right there, right? Y'all were out there in the rain that day, you know, so I can say that the community exists here. To what degree? And like, if I had to compare it to certain places in the South, like, that's a debate, that's a conversation.
I am not sure about the violence in Mobile. I will say that Mobile was maybe one of the top 3 or 4 places where AIDS was running rampant. Although that's not quite violence, but in a way it is.
Yeah,
it's violence in the aspect of protecting people and keeping them safe. So I think that the makeup from how South is versus how North is, I don't know if that makes a difference in community. So if it's worded that way, then it may be different. It's definitely different in the South. Community would be stronger, I think, in the South than in the North.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, I would say yes, because although I grew up in Philly, I didn't grow up in Mobile. So I don't really know what life would be in my mirror looking at myself if I grew up in Mobile and then came to Philly, because I did it the other way around. But I would say that going to the South every summer, it's not the city. The South wasn't city. So that made a difference, I think.
Are you going to country South or city South? Because a lot of people think...
I'm going to large town. I call Mobile a large town because it's not country, although it has country aspects, because Pritchard is kind of country.
Pritchard sounds country.
Pritchard is kind of, but they're right next door to each other. So I think that would be where the difference comes in. It's country South, although not quite country.
Yeah.
Versus city North, and you got the pavement. There's still dirt roads in the South. There's still in Fairhope, Alabama was number 4 on retirement at one time. But I'm trying to think where Build-A-Bear came to a place. I can't remember, because my mother came to town and we took my daughter when they first opened, and I think my daughter was 2. So they were just building. So all over it was still the old South.
Yeah.
And all we had was Dillard's.
Yeah, we had Dillard's.
Yes.
My aunt worked at Dillard's.
And that was the only department store we had was Dillard's. And then we had the other, small little places, but not malls and not shopping centers. So in that aspect, it was still not even built upon yet. And that was in 2000. My daughter was born 2004. So that was 2005 or 6.
I think that's what I like about things, right? When things aren't developed, people develop them, right? There's room for development. And so, but when we think things are developed, we don't really go in and try to do it. Like the need isn't necessarily there, right? So even when you talk, so I think about it on 2 levels. One, you said like, we had Dillard's, right? So somebody could say like, hey, all my competition, Dillard's is my only competition, so let me start a clothing store, right? Back home we have a clothing place called Looking Good. Like it's a black-owned spot, in downtown Pine Bluff, Arkansas. It's called Looking Good.
Black owned?
Black owned, right? And it's been there for years. It's been there pretty much, I believe, my whole life, right? But that comes out of what? One, integration or like segregation that's probably far before that. So if we talk about things are segregated and that black people can only go to black stores, all right, so these people need black stores, right? I'm going to start a black store. If you fast forward to the other part I think about is like in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, hey, there are no poetry events in this city. Let me start a poetry event, right? We did that. Like we did that in the early 2000s. And so,
yes, we did.
Yeah.
And
Spoken Word of Mobile.
Spoken Word of Mobile, right?
Still
and that's
going down.
like 24, you said 24 years, so it has to be 25 years at this point. You know what I mean? 25, close to 25 years, right? In Mobile at the library, right?
At the library.
So if there were no poetry events in Philadelphia, that's where somebody would start. Let's do a poetry event at the library. But it's to the point we don't have a regular poetry event at the library. And there's no, I'm not, like we have the Monday Poets, we have one-off things, right? But there's no, let's do it at the public library. And I think those things are needed because me, myself, I love being at the open mic that has 10 people in it, and we might go 3 times. We might do 3 rounds of poetry, and it allows everybody to get out what they need to get out, and they didn't have to pay $25 to do one piece. And everything doesn't have to be recorded. You know what I mean? At the open mic.
Poets should not pay that are performing.
Straight up. Yeah. And it's a difference if you're paying like $5, you know. It's a difference. So if it's free, we all get in for free. And I could understand that like open mic that it charges everybody else 10, but it charges the poets 5. Like I can get that, right? But the event that's charging $20 to like have me perform, and then they use my footage afterwards to promote the next event, I'm good on it. I'm straight.
Was that a thing like in the past where like if you're performing you good, you don't have to?
Well, I know my sister actually opened me up to, she took me to my first open mic at the International House. I don't know if the I House is still
IHP?
there. I don't know if it's still there.
Yeah, over at
So
UPenn.
it was where, yes, on Penn's campus, it's on Chestnut Street.
Yeah.
So we paid $5, did poetry, ate. I mean, food was included. We were down South Street. There were a lot of different little places. And I believe that when something, I don't know the poetry, I was in Mobile when the poetry scene really kind of started and moving and excelling and pushing through.
Yeah.
But I know that it wasn't really costly, and it was just poetry. Yeah, it was just poetry.
It was more enjoyable. So I feel, so that'd be 41. But there's a scene, there's a time of poetry that I really miss. And I was a teenager in it, but I wasn't called a youth poet, right? One of the things I loved about the poetry scene I grew up in, or the time I grew up in, was that you could be 16 years old, but when you walk into an open mic poetry event, you're viewed as an equal, right? And that's still like somewhat true today, but in my opinion, not true almost at all, right? We see a young poet come in today, and we enable them actually really quickly. We give them too much applause, right? We clap like we don't expect for them to be good. We haven't even heard them yet, and we're trying to encourage them. I think we should encourage them, but we also want to know what level. Are they a 10? Are they a 8? Are they a 1? Are they a 5? Right? Some teenagers I'm going to encourage because, they need to get that out. This is a release for them. Some teenagers I'm going to encourage on like they might do poetry for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? Different levels of encouragement. So what I really used to enjoy was like just coming in and being an equal, and those adults sit back and see what you have to say first. You know what I mean? And then they meet you there.
Well, I would say that Spoken Word of Mobile was created because I didn't want my hair to smell like smoke anymore. And I didn't want to come home smelling like smoke because I was at a speakeasy. Well, I started off at Jazzy Blues Cafe. Then I went to Jazz Street. And then I was at the speakeasy on St. Stephen's Road. And I'm like, okay, I can't smell like smoke anymore. So my vision was from the age of 5 to 75, you can come to the library and hear you might be a poet. If you're 5, you're not coming to the speakeasy.
Right.
You're not even going to be allowed to even come in. If you're 75, you're able to do whatever you want, but you might not want to. So
you might feel uncomfortable. It might just be too much.
Say that again?
You might feel uncomfortable with 75. It just might be too much for you.
So coming to the library, it's an open forum, and it's a free space, meaning what you just said. You could be 5 doing a poem, and we're going to applaud you because of your work, not because you're 5. Mm-hmm. And we will actually uplift you because you 5 getting it in. Mm-hmm. That's dope. Mm-hmm. So on that note, yes, so that was the whole purpose. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that as we're talking and it's coming out more, youth poetry is something that I would like to delve into. Now that's what Just Greg did. PPYM was youth poetry movement. Yeah,
they were. And so it's like, even with PYPM, it's I go, and this is my conversation. This is my conversation at the house. This is my conversation all day. Are we preparing, everybody, right? Because for the next level of it, for the poets who are teenagers and are supposed to go to the next level, are we preparing them?
What's the next level? What are we preparing them for?
For some, the next level is publishing, like getting a collection together and publishing a book. Mm-hmm. For some, and so that might be publishing a book doing self-publishing, or they may actually submit to publishers and work to get accepted. That depends on the poet. Again, I'm really big about, like, where's the poet? What do they want? What do they think they want? Like, what are they even saying that they want? And can we go from there? But for some, it's going to be publishing. For some, that's going to be making an album, like audio, focus on the audio. For some, that's going to be an event curator, right? For some, that's going to be the poetry coach at the local school or local schools, right? Numerous schools. PYPM isn't around anymore, right? So sometimes that means preparation for the next level means preparing the person that's going to do the exact work that we're doing today so they can do it tomorrow, right? Next level might mean chapbook publishing, videographer. It's so many jobs and positions. It might be, radio, right? Bringing poets in, starting a radio show. Starting a poetry show that, So these are the next levels. Like, what's the work that's needed? The work that is needed will tell you what the next level is. Right?
Got it. I like that. Yeah. Because my thought was going into senior centers. Because I have I have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And it's not really being used the way I would like for it to be used. So I said, maybe I can start going to the senior center and sharing poetry. And just being there just to be, it's a change of pace. It's something to look forward to. And just sharing the culture. And it might be a poet, 2 or 3 that's in that senior center. And it may be a new door that's opened and it's healing.
Wow.
That would be a form of healing. But I'm digging what you said, because I've been talking about youth and poetry, but poetry is scary. Mm-hmm. So I call it creative writing. And through creative writing, that's the segue into poetry. Because if I say, who's interested in a poetry class? It might be 1 or 2 hands. Mm-hmm. Creative writing. Let's write about you. Let's write about, something you would like to do. And I always do, when I was at Roosevelt, anything I do with writing, I always give 3 bullets. So I might say, what are your 3 favorite foods? And they can list them. So we have the intro. The first food that you mentioned is your second paragraph. That second food is your third paragraph. That third food is your fourth paragraph. And then we have a closure. It's almost like the sandwich. So to teach children, or just start off with them, just so that they can feel, I can write. Oh, this is good. But to throw the word poetry or poet, I always felt that was a hot ball. And it might hit people to the point where they're just so scared they don't even want to be. But that's just me. I'm not saying that that's valid.
No, I mean,
but
I
even
think
with
that's
adults, and I say poetry, but if I say creative writing, it's like, oh, and not even to say journaling, because journaling is a chore when it comes to some minds of people. Oh, I got to journal again today? Every time I come in her room, I got to write a journal? Yes, you do, because you need to write about you. And then public speaking. Children need to do public speaking. So this would also entail you getting up in front of one another. At St. Raymond, I did that. I had to give a grade for listening. Can you imagine getting a grade to listen?
That's funny.
It was a grade to present and a grade to listen. So that taught me something that I was able to teach with those children. And a lot of those children would get up and, I mean, they can get up and speak. That's hard to do. That's hard to do for a lot of people, to get up and talk in front of a room full of people. So I think that's a plan.
Yeah.
That's a plan, a journey.
It's needed.
I think so. And we need to get it where youth are getting up and speaking about what they need to speak about and what they need to talk about.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. I feel like, and I feel like we have to do it too, right? The adult poets, I mean, right? So when you say go into a senior citizen center, right? I'm like, yeah, like that's what we need, and we need it. Like, so I'll say this: there's certain things we're doing with youth that I'm like, oh, we need that actually in our 20-somethings. Our 20-somethings need that. Our 30-somethings need that in poetry, right? We've kind of, the adult poets in their 20s and 30s particularly, because I feel like everybody else understands, like, oh, I could never go to open mic and I can do poetry every day without ever going to open mic, right? But for a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, they believe the entry is open mic and open mic only. They're not hearing about the senior citizen. Miss Vicky, right? Miss Vicky was the first person to take me to one of the senior centers. I say senior citizen centers because that's what it is back home. I don't know I know. So the senior center here in like Germantown, right? And had me work with those seniors, and we ended up publishing a chapbook with them. And I just like being around them, right?
Yes.
They're chill, right? They're not, they're trying to get the next feature and not trying to do the new thing, and right? So I feel like what's good for the youth is like good for those early adult poets as well. And to always say like, no, root what you do in the community, because the community's not going anywhere. Poetry events come and go, but if you root yourself in the community, you'll be good for a lifetime. And so, yeah. So even hearing you talk about the senior center, I'm like, yeah, like that's great, because it's always going to be people in the senior center. Like,
I play pinochle with the seniors.
Yeah.
And they were like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I paid my money. And they were like looking at me, and I was like, so now I am a senior, according to their age. So I think that the arts of even graphic design, because that's a form of art, we need to get youth involved, because it's not there. And I'm not saying after school. Then again, I don't know. It might be a poetry camp. But the whole thing with poetry camp, you have to have a place, you have to have clearances. So we want it to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting them just to be more aware of their like surroundings. And because a lot of, so I'm 32. I went back to school. I'm getting my bachelor's at 32. And there were just a lot of things that I just wasn't aware of until now. And I feel like when you all were talking about like the senior centers, and I think we have to find value in those things as well. Like, we're not paying attention to something like that because we don't see the value in that. Like, why would I want to go to a senior center and like sit around and entertain them when I could be getting my followers up, or like I could be, getting money for like what I'm doing. We don't see value in like the mundane and like just everyday living. But like when we get older, and like me being 32, they're selling my culture back to me. Like I realized so many things that, like, damn, if I could have just like understood that at this age, like, wow, where would I be now? Man.
But you are where you are now, and you know what you're not learning. So I believe that when we are where we are at that time, we are there. That is the time we're supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And if we talk about seniors and the reality of what it is, that is a group of people that we throw away, that we no longer uplift or even look at, as we ourselves too will be a senior one day. I mean, I want to live for another 50 years. So I'm definitely going to be a senior because I can only get older. So then what do we do? It's really interesting because when I come across seniors, I like the word elders, actually. When I come across my elders in the grocery store or wherever I am, and they're apologetic because they're not moving fast, and my comment is to them, my day is coming. Take your time, because the real deal is, if we live long enough, and it depends on how we and what we do with our bodies, how we're going to be when we get to become a senior. So if we were to build that community, that would be community. We're touching youth, we're touching seniors, and we're coming together in the words of poetry. Yeah.
That'd be dope.
I think so. All right, audience, you are listening to WPEB 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM. This is CJ. You are listening to CJ Speaks Live, and we are just here talking about being creative. We're talking about how we can just come back into this world of community, not just being black, although black is my bag that I'll always carry, but there's so many other people that we can also walk in solidarity with as we are on this journey to reach and obtain. I don't know if I'm going to say a quicker journey, but it is a journey. Yes. And we're only getting older. So tell us about yourself, KP, and you have this book. Oh, and you put me down with the chapbook.
Word.
I used to make greeting cards when I was in Mobile. So when you said chapbook, I said, if I could make my own greeting cards, I can make my own chapbooks. Yes. Right on my computer. So that's really my goal.
There's a copy. I literally just give it to people to like touch and look at it.
I think I bought one. I think I bought one the day we went on that walking tour.
Where, yeah, I believe so.
But the thing is, KP, it's not just a book. I mean, you have the X Pine Bluff resident releases poetry CD at the beginning. You have all of this footage. I mean, your book is more than just a book. It is a message.
Yeah. I'm really excited about the book. I'm really happy about the book. And please, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I've been doing family tree research since 2005, 2006. And I really, if you talked to me during the pandemic, I was not talking about poetry, like, so much. Sort of paying attention, sort of completely out of it. Yeah, Nicole's in the book. It's an artifact, right? So I really want this book to, like, capture my full life, right? And that's too small. So I really wanted this book to be like, all right, here's the time in which I lived. These were the things that were important to me. This was the story over the course of 25 years. I didn't really want to tell the story of 2020 or 2025. I want to tell the story of 1999 up until 2025, like from when I started writing poetry to where I am today. And if you never hear any other part of my story, I'm fine with you knowing that part, right?
Yes.
This is titled 84 Ultra. Because 1984 is the year that I was born. And this is really hey, I'm 40 years old. Here's my collection of poetry. Because I haven't put a collection of poetry out since 2012, 2013. So that would have been, 12 years ago, something like that. I would have been late 20s, right? The last time I really put out a collection of poetry. And I'm such a different person. Yeah. my ancestors are my ghostwriters. It's Eat a Poet. Shout out to Eat a Poet MC. And that's a part of the story too, right? Like everything in there is a part of the story. Eat a Poet MC in many ways has been a mentor of mine since 2007. There's not a poet in Philadelphia that I've known longer than Eat a Poet MC, right?
Huggy Bear?
I met him probably 5 or 6 years after I met E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I met E in D.C. He's performing at Busboys, doing a feature at Busboys and Poets. So the book has like artifacts in it. So you see newspaper articles in the book. There's my grandmother makes a cameo in the book, and her son. Yeah, that's my grandmother, and that's her child, Junior. He was the first boy, and he passed when he was a baby. And so it's like, well, I'm the grandson, and I'm putting out work. I'm publishing work, and like people are going to see this book. So how can I let the people in my life live forever? You know what I mean? I never met this uncle who died as a 3 or 4 year old. But then I look at my niece and my nephews, and I'm like, oh my God, like they were complete people when they were 3 or 4, and I remember them, right? They're still living, but I have memories of when they were 3 and 4, and so when I think about my grandmother losing this child, I understand better like what happened with her, and that all of this is worth documenting, and
So you have 10 albums?
Yeah, that sounds right. So yeah, Primary Concern, Deuteronomy 19, Two Pens in Lent, Poetry Hip Hop album, KP since 1984, which is the album I did with Eat a Poet MC, 2 mixtapes, Straight No Chaser, Volume 1, Volume 2, 84 Ultra, and I might be missing 1 or 2.
I told Karen Smith that you were poet extraordinaire, and here it is right here in the book.
I really can't express I really love it, right? I think they're better writers than me.
Is there a better or less than?
Yes.
Or is it just people? How is that graded?
So
how do we go to school and get a grade on who's the best poet? Explain that.
So I can't tell you who's the best poet, but I can sit down and compare 2 poems and look at similes and metaphors and skills and techniques. I can do that, right? So, but that may not tell you who's the most genuine, right? It's all kind of different categories, and I prefer talking into the categories as opposed to acting like there are no categories that we can ever make up. I love it. I love when people say like, hey, we're all in this together, and that's true. But when it's time to pay somebody $500, who's the best poet?
Okay. On that note,
yeah.
Yes. So I think that comes from exposure, experience, and knowing a name.
Yeah. Doing your research.
Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with most of that.
Okay.
I don't know what all you mean by the name, but
I say the name because I'll use Nikki Giovanni as an example. I'm using her name, but I'm also going to go with the sister that did the inauguration, Amanda Gorman.
Yeah. So
would we have known an Amanda Gorman if she didn't do the inauguration?
And that's
but not that makes her a great poet or not.
Yeah.
But then we have a Nikki Giovanni that we know in a household. Mm-hmm. And I know you both saw her documentary.
Yeah, we watched it together.
Ooh, that was a dope documentary. So just seeing that documentary and her walk is what allows her to be who she is.
Yeah. And so, and I'll push back on everything, right?
That's what makes conversations grand.
Because, like, so Nikki, I love Nikki Giovanni, first of all. So this is no shade at all to Nikki Giovanni. Where I push back on is I want like hosts and curators to really be scouts, right? So in basketball, coaches are always looking for the next basketball player.
Yes.
Right? There's always a building of the team. In poetry, oh, I got Nikki, so that's it. I'm not gonna look for nobody else, right? So I think even in poetry,
But why did I stop and say I'm not looking for anyone else?
yeah, I'm not speaking about you.
Oh, no.
Or
we're just speaking in general.
so what I'm saying is
the person
that
says,
I'm saying
Nikki Giovanni, I'm not going anywhere else. But why did they say that?
because they found their poet that they can fill in for every slot.
Because they feel that she is one of the better poets.
They know she has a name, right? So I see so many people book the legends, the OGs, but never listen to their work, never read their poetry. They know the name, but they haven't dug into the poetry. So my thing is sometimes like I'm looking for a name, but I want that name to be dope. Obviously, Nikki Giovanni is going to be dope. I've never seen Nikki Giovanni be like, oh, that wasn't good. What I am saying is that, like, all right, can we get Shirley Williams on the bill too? Because she's really good. You know what I mean? And her work complements Nikki Giovanni's work, right? So can we get Shirley Williams in too?
Who is that?
That's the person down the street that nobody knows. You know what I mean? It's a hypothetical, right? But it's the person down the street that, like, so in basketball we go, like, there were people that were better than Michael Jordan, but we never knew them. So it doesn't matter, right? It matters to them, like, but, you know, there were people who could have beat Michael Jordan, but they didn't go to the league. So in poetry, I'm always thinking about, like, who are we missing? Who are the poets that we're missing? Who are we overlooking? Who's the person that's dope but doesn't have a name, but we can help build their name, right? And that's why I say Nikki Giovanni. We say Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Maya Angelou, in over 50 years of poetry. We're naming 3 people. Like, that's a problem. You know what I mean? Again, no shade to any of them. But it's like, let's mention Henry Dumas. Let's mention Robert Hay. And I'm not even just saying like men, right? I have no issue as far as gender or anything like that. But I noticed that when we talk about poets, and this is a problem for us in 2025, because if we allow the general public, when they think about poets, they only think about 3 people, we have an issue on our hands.
We have an issue. In school, we talk about MLK, we talk about Rosa Parks, and we talk about Malcolm X.
Right.
Period.
But where's Medgar Evers?
Period.
Where's
End
Frederick
of discussion.
Douglass? Where's Ida B. Wells? You know what I mean?
We don't talk about any of those people.
Right. And so we can't allow the systems that we live in to be lazy on our part, right? To be lazy to the point that we're not getting the information that we need, and we're becoming lazy ourselves by not seeking out people who are dope within our communities and environments.
So I'm getting more and more confirmation. So in what we're saying right now, it sounds like as the community of poets, we need to come together and have conversations.
Yeah, conversation and do work.
And do the work.
Yeah.
So I've been saying this. I bought a house January a year ago. And I said I wanted to start doing once a month, every other month, a meeting of creatives. So I think that needs to take place.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Summer is a few weeks from now. Well, it's in June, so yes. So that's what I'm going to do. And then we can start doing things. And the meeting place is going to be at my house.
Or that would be perfect.
Yes.
Because I think large part of what we're missing.
I think that's something we need. Now that brunch that E has, whoo-hoo, that joint was dope. That Complex, I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep. When we went to Complex Angel and I was your guest.
Yeah, that was a great event.
That was dope.
The one at the Eco Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And that was the first anything that I've experienced like that before. All right, Philly, we getting dope up out of here. It is 6:00. Thank you both for being here today. Nicole, KP Ultra. This has really been great conversation. Good conversation.
Thank you.
All right, Philly, until next time, we're out. Peace.
Peace.